everyone gets along, everyone agrees. Y'all, that doesn't actually exist in real life. It doesn't even exist on TV. Here's the thing. You would not sit down to watch a sitcom or a movie that didn't have some kind of issue or friction in the first probably 3 minutes. You would be bored. Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about life and how to live a good one, no matter where you are. Thank you for joining me here. Today's episode is 267, and the date is February 19th, 2024. Hello to anybody who happens to be new today. I am so glad you're here. I'm glad you're here if this is your first time or your millionth time. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be your millionth time. There's only been 267 episodes, but all right. Topic. What is the topic today? I know some of you are super excited for this topic, and I know that because I have never received so many comments and emails saying, I am so excited for next week's podcast. I can't wait. Why are you making me wait a whole week? This is kind of the second part of what I talked about last week, okay? So go back and listen to last week if you haven't listened to it yet. But this week we are talking about why we hate people and why we suck at being social. This is kind of part 2 from last week. And to be honest, this topic really could have went a bazillion different ways. But what I talk about in the main part of today's episode is just kind of a couple rabbit trails that I went down from where I'm sitting, from my perspective, from where I am in life. And this is a really big topic. So this is not the final ta-da. It is not the last word. I don't ever have the last word on anything. You don't have to agree with me, but it's things I'm seeing from my perspective where I sit. And hopefully this is going to give you something to think about. And hopefully you're not going to need to cover yourself in Band-Aids or ice packs when you get to thinking about all this and realize all the ouch that may be in this episode for you and for me as well. All right. So before we get to that, what has been happening on the Lifestead? Well, for those of you who have been following along with the blacksmithing journey that I decided to take myself on, our forge is finally up and running. It took a while to build, took a really long time for the refractory cement inside of it to dry, and then we had to cure it. And then, okay, now it's up and running and we're going to start it. And so we take it into the garage and we get it all set up, and now we're going to hook it up to the propane and all of this. And y'all, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was so excited to start this. And when my husband started it for the first time, I was scared to death. I am sure the look on my face was like, what in the world have I gotten myself into? Y'all, it is a place of power. This forge heats up to like 30 bazillion degrees. Okay, it's not 30 bazillion degrees, but we are heating up metal to shape it. Okay, this gets so hot inside this little baby thing. Y'all, it's insane. And I was scared to death of it, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And by the next day, it's okay. It's okay. And now I'm loving it, and I haven't done anything really exciting with it because there's a lot of fundamentals that you need to learn, okay? We're going to stick a piece of round rebar in there, and we need to figure out how to make that round rebar into a square thing, okay? Like the edges are no longer round, they are square. That is a process to do. It is a process to learn how to bend something and twist something and shape something before you get into all the cool things you're going to make. So I'm still at the point where I'm just learning fundamentals and sticking steel in there and be like, okay, what are we going to learn how to do today? My husband is awesome. And so the first thing he did when he turned this forge on to see how it worked was he decided he's going to make a pair of tongs, like a pair like grabber, like tongs. We have a pair of tongs, which is what we put stuff into the forge with and grab it out with, obviously, because you're not putting your hand in there. So he just basically looked at those tongs and decided, I'm going to make another pair of tongs. And he did it. And it was awesome. And it was so fun to watch him. He's got a really amazing mechanical brain, and he can look at the way something is built and go, okay, this is how you build it. I don't have that ability. I am pretty dumb when it comes to mechanical stuff. It is not a strength of mine. And so this whole journey is going to be real interesting, okay? But I am super excited to do more blacksmithing, and I'm super excited that this is finally up and running, and that's my update on that. Let's hop into this main topic, which is going to be twice as spicy as last week. So if you want to prepare by grabbing yourself an ice pack, you might want to get ready for that in the next 10 seconds. All right, here we go. The other day, I was thinking about relationships and how relationships in our life matter and how we make relationships, and that got me to thinking about being social and how we are social in these modern times when we are super hyper connected to each other, but the socialness and the relationships seem to have changed. I was doing a bunch of thinking about this, and I posted a piece on social media. This is probably maybe a month ago, and I wanted people's feedback on it. Okay, so here is what I posted. Here is the post. Life really is about relationships. Sometimes you get the job because of relationships. You fix your mental health, have insightful conversations, and share meals because of relationships. You get help because of relationships. You find the house, learn a new skill, or get a deal because of relationships. You probably met someone significant in your life because of another relationship you already had. Relationships give us house sitters, laughter around a bonfire, inside jokes, and every flower at a funeral. So why do we hate people? So that was what I posted, and I got a whole bunch of responses back on that post. I wanted people to kind of explore this whole, why is it tough for us to be social, and why do we say we hate people, and what's with all of that? So I got lots of responses back. And in those responses, people went down lots of rabbit trails on lots of thoughts, which took me down lots of rabbit trails on lots of thoughts. And so that is why we now have this episode. Why is it so hard for us to be social? Why is that difficult for us now in a way it wasn't in the past? Why do we suck at being social? Why in a world where we are more connected than ever have we forgotten how to talk to each other and how to do life together as a larger community? In last week's episode, I talked about introversion, being an introvert, and that was something that came up as a huge response to that thing that I posted. Well, I'm an introvert. That's why I don't like to be around people. I'm an introvert. That's why I hate talking to people. I'm an introvert. And so if you listen to last week's episode, you know that I pulled that whole introversion piece out and did its own episode on that topic. When I did that episode, there was a lot of different feedback from that. A lot of people felt called out. A lot of people kind of viewed it as food for thought. And then there were a lot of people who wanted to tell me that why, as an introvert, they still needed to not be around people. Okay, the whole point of last week's episode was to say that sometimes people are using I'm an introvert as an excuse to just basically not do life. Okay, so I did have some people who will say, yeah, I'm an introvert and I get what you're saying, but I still need to not be around people because, and then they would tell me about some situation in their life that, y'all, was not introversion. It was anxiety. It was PTSD. It was family trauma. It was not introversion. So my addendum to last week's episode would be, we have to call it what it is. You can be an introvert with anxiety, but anxiety is not the same as being an introvert, okay? So just be careful and use the right words. I'm a writer, so maybe that's why words matter so much to me, but call it what it is, okay? If you don't want to go somewhere, if you don't want to be involved with people, if you have a certain situation in your life that makes it very difficult for you to be in a group of people or get involved in the community, call it what it is, because I don't think it's introversion. Introversion means you like to be alone because that's where you get your energy. It's not an excuse to not do life with other people, okay? Something else that was brought up when I posted that thing, that list of here's all the things we get from relationships. You fix your mental health, you have insightful conversations, you share meals, you find a house, you get a deal, all that. It all has to do with relationships. If you don't have relationships, a lot of that stuff isn't going to happen, right? Something that a lot of people pointed out when I posted that, and I knew this when I posted it, so it's not like it was news to me. Everything in that list has a flip side, right? Everything on that list has a yeah, but... Because sometimes your mental health sucks because of other people. Sometimes you have sucky conversations because of other people. Sometimes you miss out on the job or the house or the deal because of other people. Sometimes you are excluded from the bonfire. You're excluded from the inside jokes because of other people. And do you know why that is? That's because this is life, and sometimes people suck. And that's not just other people that suck. Sometimes we suck as well, because that's part of being a human being. And when you deal with other human beings, when you decide to be in a life where other people exist, you're going to deal with what human beings do. It's a package deal. Sometimes they suck, sometimes they don't. And I think that's something we need to get really honest about. Sometimes we suck, sometimes we don't. And that's true of everybody. Okay? Having said that, something else that came out when I made this post was, I'm not going to talk to people because everybody sucks. I hate people because everybody sucks. Okay? There's a lot of people that said that. And I posted this in various places. Here's what I think. Yes, people can suck. But I think the problem is it's cooler to talk about people who suck. And it's easier to get on board with that and pull everyone into that conversation. Right? Because negativity sells. Frustration sells. Anger sells. If I post, oh my God, why are people so horrible? If I post that online, I guarantee you I'm going to get way more comments and way more discussion going than if I post, let's talk about someone who's awesome, right? Nobody replies to that, or they think you're nuts or unrealistic. If I'm at a family dinner and I bring up something negative, if I bring up something spicy, I'm going to get way more intense and longer lasting interaction than if I bring up how pretty the sky is today or how much I appreciate the person who does our taxes. I don't know. You're going to get way more interaction when you talk about why everything is terrible and horrible and why people are bad and everything sucks. Here's what I think. Most people are decent most of the time. We all do stupid things. We all do sucky things. But I think most people are decent most of the time. I think we are shown the worst of the worst, online especially, because, number one, it sells. And number two, a screen makes people brave. We know this. And that means people are going to be more jerkish and more sucktastic than they would probably be in person just because they can. And this whole I believe most people are decent. I'm also going to put a caveat there, which is if you work a job where you are dealing with really difficult people all the time or people in crisis all the time, you probably have a really different view on this. That's because of your job. That's because of your community. That's because of what you're dealing with on a daily basis. And so you're in a different place than I am. And that's that. That's my caveat. I think we all have the capacity to make bad decisions or be horrible people, but I would also argue that there is a small percent of the population, many of them repeat offenders, making issues or causing trouble for the rest of the population. And I mean this in various ways, for all sorts of reasons. We could be talking about criminals, we could be talking about conflict entrepreneurs, we could be talking about lots of different stuff. Most of us are just not that exciting. We're just living our life. We're doing our thing. We're not that exciting. But we don't talk about the non-exciting stuff, do we? Heck no. That doesn't get as much airtime. That's not glittery and spicy and exciting to talk about. We want to talk about something exciting, something that gets us going, right? Most of us aren't that exciting. So what do we latch on to? The spicy stuff. The people who suck. The terrible situation. It's like a human thing. I don't know why we do that, but that's what we do. Another thing that I heard when I posted this thing online was, I'm not social with people, and I'm not even social with my family because my family is horrible. I don't get together with my family anymore because they're terrible. I really don't like being around them. They are terrible, terrible people. We don't get along. We don't agree on anything. My family is horrible. Okay, I heard that a lot in the various places that I discussed this. Now, maybe your family is horrible. I don't know. But here's what I'm going to say. There have always been issues in families. Always, always, always. Your great-grandma was dealing with issues in the family. Your great-great-great-grandma was dealing with issues in the family. There have always been issues. Family get-togethers have always been dramatic. There has always been that elephant in the room, or the uncle who was a jerk, or the racist grandpa. There's always been the mom or the aunt or whoever who was up in your business way more than she should have been. Okay? There's always the person who couldn't be nice. So our problems today with our families are not special. They're not special, you guys. Now, there definitely has been a movement towards, I'm not going to deal with that anymore, so if you're going to be a jerk, I'm not coming to Christmas. There's definitely been a movement towards that. There's been more comfort. It's more normal for people to say that, if you're going to do that, like, I'm just not coming. I'm not coming to Christmas, okay? And while I don't necessarily think that's bad, to have boundaries and all of that, I don't necessarily think that's bad. I do think that there's a flip side of that, in that we don't ever have to deal with people who suck. And sometimes we need to deal with people who suck to be a person with more well-rounded social skills. Okay? Now, I am not saying become best friends with your abusive father. I'm not saying that. Please do not send me hate mail. But as a larger picture, when we cut everyone and everything out of our life that has any kind of friction, and we only surround ourselves with people we deem as perfect, whatever that means for us, when someone suddenly comes into our lives who is abrasive or super sensitive or has a really foul mouth or doesn't agree with us, we literally do not know how to handle it anymore. We shut down. Or we're like, oh my God, the audacity of you being who you are. Oh my God. And now we hate people, right? There is a newish podcast that I listen to. There's a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, and you can fill the F word in there. That was written 10-ish years ago, I want to say, by Mark Manson, I believe is who the author is. Well, now he has a podcast. And I don't often reread books, but the Subtle Art book is one that I try to reread once a year because there's just so many gems in there, and I always have to be reminded about everything it says in this book. So anyway, he has a podcast now, and on January 10th of this year, he did an episode called Why Everyone's Social Skills Are Getting Worse. And that was a discussion with David Brooks, and I will put the link for that in the show notes. I would highly suggest you go listen to it. If you have a problem with profanity, skip it because there's a lot of profanity in it, but such good stuff in there. And he talks about how we've lost the ability to deal with disagreement. We've lost the ability to deal with confrontation because we can pick and choose our people so easily now. And it's this really interesting episode that kind of goes through the snowball effect of here's this cool thing we did by creating all these great communities and kind of handpicking all of our people. And here's the snowball effect of how it affected all this other stuff that we don't really think about. So it's a super interesting conversation. Highly recommend that you take some time with that podcast episode. It will be in the show notes. But so why do we hate people? Why do we suck at being social? Here's what I think. It's because we're looking for communities made up of humans who don't actually exist. We are looking for groups of people where there is no friction. We are looking for groups of people where everyone gets along and agrees because we can kind of sort of create those on social media. We create them around a hobby or an interest or where we live or whatever, and we kind of curate these groups to be what we want them to be. And we don't allow friction, and we don't allow mean comments, and we don't allow, there's all this stuff we don't allow, and so we make these little bubbles that we live in, right? Everyone gets along, everyone agrees. Y'all, that doesn't actually exist in real life. It doesn't even exist on TV. Here's the thing. You would not sit down to watch a sitcom or a movie that didn't have some kind of issue or friction in the first probably 3 minutes. You would be bored. You would turn it off. What are we watching if there's no friction, if there's no problem to solve, if there's no issue? If you don't have friction, what do you have? I saw a quote online the other day that kind of applies to this. It's from Charles Bukowski is who it was attributed to, and it said, "And when nobody wakes you up in the morning and nobody waits for you at night. And when you can do whatever you want, what do you call it? Freedom or loneliness? I thought that was super interesting and kind of applied to this episode. Let me read it again. And when nobody wakes you up in the morning, and nobody waits for you at night, and when you can do whatever you want, what do you call it? Freedom or loneliness? There is no black and white to this topic, and I think that's why it's so difficult. There's no black and white. There's a lot of really uncomfortable truths, because I think what it comes down to is it's having it be really awesome that we don't have to deal with jerks. Like, we've got to a place in our society where, okay, we're just going to create these little bubbles where we don't have to deal with jerks. But it's also realizing that when we cut out every single jerk out of our life, we don't know how to deal with jerks anymore. And actual real life experiences mean we're going to encounter jerks or abrasive people or people who don't agree with us or people who are super sensitive about whatever issue or fill in the blank. Knowing how to deal with stuff means you have to know how to deal with stuff, which means you have to actually have experience dealing with that stuff. And I think that's what we have lost by curating our own perfect little online communities. Something I was thinking about that kind of applies to this is something that I find interesting is that so many people are frustrated with the families they grew up in, right? That's why we all pick our families, right? Our hand-picked friends that become our family. We make these little groups of people that we really love because we don't want to be with our families because we're frustrated with the families we grew up in and frustrated in all of that. And nobody wants to go to Christmas because we're just so frustrated with our families. They don't understand us and all of that, right? This has happened generation after generation after generation. That's what's so interesting, okay? So look at it this way. Generation A raises their kids a certain way. They raise Generation B, right? And Generation B grows up and says, I don't want to raise my kids that way, the way I was raised. I don't want to live that life. I don't, whatever that encompasses. And so they raise their kids, Generation C, in a different way. And then Generation C grows up and says, I don't want to raise my kids that way. I don't want to live that way. I don't want to whatever. And so they raise their kids, Generation D, a different way, and so on and so forth. When you are frustrated because of what is happening at your Christmas get-together or whatever's going on in the family, your grandma was dealing with the same thing when she went to Christmas when she was your age, and so was your great-great-grandma. This has always happened. Everyone nowadays thinks they are the only generation that's doing things differently than their parents. They think they're changing the freaking world. Hello. This is what it has always been. Every generation wants to change the world and do something different, and then they become the ones that their kids are like, oh my God, you guys totally screwed it up. I don't even want to go to Christmas with you. You guys are all psycho. I mean, this has happened so many times in history. We're not special. This is just how it is. And how in the world can generations of people saying, I want to do something different, be the same people that we're now complaining about at Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving and when we get together? And when we're talking about the larger society, you guys, this is a constant cycle that has always happened. That's a whole different podcast episode. I'll put that on the list. But again, I am not saying be best friends with your abusive relative. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that when we cut every person who we don't jive with or who is a little abrasive or rough-edged for our taste or who is way more emotional than us or whatever, we don't know how to deal with actual real people who aren't us anymore. We make these little online communities or even not online. I've seen this sometimes, like with homeschooling communities. We have our little homeschool community and everybody agrees and everything's great. And then someone does something different and then they have to go find a new group or start their own group or they don't go to that group because now we don't agree. And it's about stupid stuff, you guys. But we have the option now to create these little communities where everybody's all the same and nobody has to deal with friction. We make these communities of people who are 97% the same, and then we have this person who comes in who's only 95% the same, and we're like, oh my God. Or someone is exactly the same, but they curse like a sailor, or they drink, or they don't drink, or they listen to some kind of music, or they have some kind of political view that's not exactly up to what we think our group is supposed to be. Then what do? We block and we delete, or we find a new group. We don't answer the text or pretend we didn't get the message so we can wait to craft a perfect response to a stressful situation or a crappy situation, because we never have to do it in person anymore, right? Gosh, I wonder why we suck at knowing how to act in social situations. It's because we aren't doing it. And neither is anyone else. And you know what? We couldn't do that 100 years ago. We couldn't do that 50 years ago. We didn't have that option. We had to deal with people. We have forgotten that dealing with people means dealing with people. And because of that, we've forgotten how to deal with people. And I think that's why we suck at being social. Even though we are, quote unquote, more connected now than we ever have been before. We're not actually dealing with people. I wrote a little free verse poem about this when I was thinking on this topic. I was going to post it on social media. I don't think I have posted it yet, but I think I'm going to do a little dramatic reading here. Because really this kind of sums it up for me about why we struggle with being social, and really how I think social media, while I think it's definitely a blessing in some instances, I think it can also be a curse. So that's what I'm going to end today's episode with. Here's my little poem. I think the best but worst thing social media did was give us the ability to handpick our people. It's comfortable to choose your own adventure and the game pieces that will come along for the ride, but social media has made it a lot easier to table flip the game board when we don't like the people moving the pieces. Social media has made it a lot easier to post questions like, why are in-person communities dying? Why are churches losing members? Why don't we do chicken dinners on Sunday anymore? And we hem and haw and suppose and discuss, but no one ever says, because I don't know how to sit in the same room with someone I disagree with anymore. Someone who is abrasive or super, super soft and squishy. Where is the delete button? Under my chair? Where is the block button? Folded in my napkin? I'm an introvert, and peopling is hard. Most people, except me, are jerks. Most people, except me, are horrible people. I'm not putting up with people anymore. So excuse me while I go be social on social media and build an empire of community that I can't access without a screen. Excuse us while we go be social on social media and worry about what social media is doing to the kids and completely ignore what it's doing to us. There you have it. Is your skin burning? Did you need an ice pack? Do you need a Band-Aid? There's a lot to unpack in that episode. And like I said in the intro, it's just my perspective from where I sit. This is a huge topic. I don't have the final word. This is not some ta-da. These are just some thoughts. And whenever I give thoughts, it's just to put it out there as food for thought for everybody else. This may not apply to you, but it might. And it might be something that you need to think through. So big topic, no black and white here. One of the many things that we tackle on the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. Share this episode with anybody that you would like to, anybody that you feel needs to hear it. I am going to head out and live a little life. Thank you so much for joining me here. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you again soon.